You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. I live on Long Island, and like you, I want to know more about where my tax dollars are going, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us, which is what this show is all about. But our guest today is Rabbi Anchelle Perl, the rabbi at Chabad of Mineola since 1990, and the host of Jewish Talk, heard Sunday mornings now at a new time of 8 a.m., right here on 90.3 WHPC. Well, welcome, Rabbi Perl, to this week's Long Island News.
Thank you, Bill. It's an honor to be with you. We've met at different occasions at the station, and to be able to join your program today is a great honor for me.
Well, it's a great honor for us, and I know you have a whole congregation that you are, taking care of, and so I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down, and we're on Zoom. You could put your feet up too if you'd like to. But let's first of all, I'm curious all about you. Well, where do you hail from, and what's your story to becoming a rabbi?
I tell you, I was 19 years old. I was born in London, England. At the age of 19, I had this sudden inspiration that I'd like to become a rabbi. And I went to my teacher. To become a rabbi typically means you've reached a certain point in your studies and you received an ordination. It's called smicha, which was rather early for me at 19. Typically in those days, we talk about in the 70s, early 70s, you really were to travel to New York. I was in Paris at that point, and I was the schedule was to go to New York and there receive this ordination. So at 19, I had this feeling. Wow. And my teacher said to me, wait, make sure you have a lot of, you have the appropriate, he used the word Yireh Shamayim, which means the appropriate foresight and recognition of the Almighty God. To have awe of the Almighty. And you have that, you'll be a good rabbi. So I realized I could still have to work on myself. And I waited till I came to New York. Now, I'm a Chabad rabbi, and as such, I'm part of a very large thousands of men and women who take up positions across the world, appointed by the Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he inspired young men and women all the way back from the 50s and the 60s to, rather than to go into other activities and other professions, but to dedicate one's life to community outreach, community support. So all the way back after receiving my ordination in New York, I got married in 1976. And we my dear wife, Bluma, we both come from England, but we emigrated to the United States appropriately and took up position here on Long Island. And we've been here since, mid-70s, and it really became serious in 1976 after our marriage. And all the way in the beginning, Bill, I had this tremendous desire, or felt calling. I'd like to be on the radio. I had a teacher, Rabbi Jacob J. Hecht, of blessed memory, who had a weekly show. It was a famous Jewish station in the city with Art Raymond. And I modeled a lot of my work by his inspiration. And so I made the effort to write to stations on the island, local stations. And believe it or not, all the way in the beginning, I started out at Delphi at 90.3. And I think at that point, both our station today, WHPC, and Delphi, actually shared the same 90.3. Right. Well, something happened with the students there, and the administration decided no more station because I think some advantage was taken. And ended up, I think this is correct, the 90.3 took the number. And then I approached this wonderful station, and I've been here all these many years. And I'm really, even though I've been here many, many years with the station, same time, I feel a tremendous renewal, excitement at the station in so many different levels. It's always been an exciting idea to be on the radio, but I think that it is, I enjoy very much seeing how the station has grown and how many students are inspired to take up positions in communications, whatever level it may be. And thanks to Sean, it's an exciting place, even though Sunday morning I'm kind of by myself. It's a one-man show. Now it's going to be more expanded, but I feel energy and the power of the radio, and there's so many people who I meet in different places of all backgrounds who listen to the program. So I'm really enjoying it.
I agree with you 100%. The atmosphere around here, and it's because the people there. I mean, I'm an old guy. I'm here, and I get to hang out with the kids, and I hear what they're thinking, and normal. I don't know what normal is, but normal radio stations, I don't think, have that kind of diversity where we really do get to mix. And I met you here, and otherwise, where would we run across each other, and where would we ever get an opportunity to sit down and talk like this?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Bill, because we actually, I knew of you, of hearing you, of course. I know your program's on Fridays, but the fact we were one of the wonderful meetings that we go to, everybody, all staff and volunteers come together, and we were sitting together, and it was an honor to meet you in person. And to see the face behind. They always say that we all have great faces for radio,
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Yep.
I also want to say that the caliber and the professionalism of the engineers at the station. I mean, I like, and I want to shout out to my particular engineer is Kim, and really, really make sure that the program runs well and professionally, and make sure everything goes.
Yeah. They do the magic behind we don't see that. We see a microphone, maybe a set of headphones, and but they're in there making sure it sounds good. And when I go home at 3:00 on Friday, I can put on a show and say, "Oh, wow!" And I have to be humble and realize I didn't do that. They did, Yeah. We were talking before about radio, and I was thinking, they've been saying for as long as radio's existed that, radio's dying. Oh, it's going away. And yet with all of the new media possibilities that exist now, radio is still here. And I think in time of a national emergency or whatever, it could get to a point where radio's the only thing left.
A good point. I agree with you. I think the power of the podcasting world now has brought back audio into focus. And I think it's easier to listen to the radio. You pop it on in the car. You can go walk around the house and hear it. And all the Alexa, all these things that are available has brought radio back into that. It is a very powerful audio. Listening is a very powerful. And a visual, I think people are more visual because of the advent of what do you call again, the videos and the YouTube.
Oh, MTV was the
So people are more used to flipping and looking at their audio or their visuals on small little video clips. So I think it's taken away more clearly from TV and focused more on the quick.
Right. Well, I think that was our observation of it, is that people seem to, especially being in the political world and interviewing political people, they call it memes and sound bites. And so, 1 3-word sentence becomes the mantra. There's nothing behind it. It's all style and no substance, Right. And to see, I first saw it, the long form thing with the Joe Rogan. He was the one that rose in the news media for having a podcast, and some of them would go for 3 hours, and people actually sat down and listen to this. And in my mind, it brings me back to the time I did a thing at Hofstra University for Democracy and Performance. I played Henry Ward Beecher, and I went through a thing. I actually got 2 horses and a carriage to bring me to my speaking location and, made a whoop-de-doo. But I think about those days, the Lincoln-Douglas debates, when they would go at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they would be at either the Brooklyn Academy of Music or one venue, and they would talk until noon. And people would sit there and listen. That was 4 hours. Then they'd break for lunch. They'd come back at 2 o'clock, and they'd go till 7 at night. Wow. And people sat there and listened to them going, and they had enough to say, if you to think about that, to fill just 10 hours. But that was their form of entertainment. And to think that it's possible in a world of memes and sound bites that people could actually get back to entertaining a long-form conversation as a mainstream thing would be thrilling.
Yeah. As long as the speaker is sincere and speaks from the heart and has spent time thinking themselves, then they'll have something interesting, intelligent to say. But the quick, the jokes and the inappropriate language that seems to also take the airwaves is something that has to be addressed. It's meaningless. It has to be. I learned from my own teachers, and certainly Rabbi Schneerson, I mentioned earlier on,
yes,
that he was the one in the Hasidic or observant world. It was like out of order, so to speak, to sit in a synagogue on a weekday, that is, and be broadcast over cable TV or even radio. It was how could he do this? But now we've seen the power of technology. You can actually use communications to bring positive messages, and I think anything that the world has to offer must be used in a positive manner. That's the reason why we're discovering all the power of communications. Everything is communications in so many different ways. And that there's also something about, what a human being must be thinking about. They have a mission. Every one of us has a reason to be here. And the main reason why every human being is here is to communicate goodness and kindness. And if you have the opportunity through a radio or TV or whatever, or podcasting, use it. The world is not a jungle. It may look that way. Yeah. It may seem that way. It's not. It's a garden. It has to be looked at as a garden. Mm-hmm. That's why I love NCC, because it's in Garden City, It reflects the world as a garden. A garden means there's walkways, there's different trees, and there's different fruits. And sometimes you got to weed out things which have grown inappropriately. So the world is a beautiful place, and the multiplicity and the diversity is its strength. If everybody looked or heard and sounded like me, it would be a boring world. It's the multiple disciplines and the multiple opportunities that we all have that makes this world really a garden city. So to Garden City, it's really the entire world is a garden city.
Yeah. And it's to our detriment when we concentrate on the differences rather than the things that are the same.
It's a weakness. It's a weakness to focus on and from that perspective. The strength of differences is when you appreciate what someone else has to offer. Yeah. In conversation, in life, in thought, and then you have a beautiful world.
Well, I've thought of this, especially in the atmosphere of politics in the last couple of years. We became at one point, and maybe we still are, a nation of immigrants who hates immigrants. And we're right at the heart of the issue, right here. The differences is what makes us strong. Yet we would use those differences in order to pick somebody out and put them down. And I think that we as people, we have to begin to recognize these things. I saw a comedian the other day, and I still haven't gotten his name. He's not a guy I see a lot, but he made a point to. We have had everything in America is a war on this and a war on that. And we've had our dichotomies. We've had the, black and white issues. We had rich and poor issues. And what he said was, right now, what we have is a war, and it's truth or lies. That's today's dichotomy.
Yeah, in every area of life. We could go into this in a great length. I think what's key to the society today, there's a lack of gratitude and appreciation for what each of us have. So much time is spent on someone else, what else somebody else is doing, or that, and not enough time a person hasn't paused for a moment and said, you know what, I should be very thankful for what I have, for where I live, and what I can do, the food, the basic things in life.
Right.
And if we take those things for granted, we spend a lot of time in these differences and finding ways to, like you say, either things are right or left, black or white. Mm-hmm. There's no understanding of middle ground. And if everybody's into their own opinion, they're not listening to anybody else's opinion. Mm-hmm. I found it fascinating. I think it still continues. You know, if you watch a certain TV cable station, you're right away branded that kind of thinking. And if it's the other one, then you're that one. I'm a this one, I'm a that one. Mm-hmm. And I laugh at it when I see, why can't you be just listening to both and coming to your own opinion? No, right away, you know, people don't have opinions anymore. You have a name. If you think a certain way, or then you must be a crazy, or you must be to the right, must be to the left. That is a big problem that we have today. And I think the basic problem why that is, people are not satisfied with what they have. So they have plenty of time to think about putting someone else down as opposed to being proud of what they are. There's a famous story, Bill, of two kids, actually, the two children of a great rabbi. And one was tall, one was short. And the one was short was always jealous of the one who was tall. And he didn't feel it fair. So one day the taller one is near kind of a ditch. And he pushes this kid down into the ditch. He says, look who's taller now. The father, who was a great rabbi, saw this, and he reprimanded the shorter one. He said, why did you do that? Here, take a chair, stand on the chair. And with standing on the chair, you'll be bigger than your brother. Why? And that's what's happening today. People are spending too much time rather than getting on your chair, so to speak. Be proud.
Making yourself better.
Make yourself better and sharing what you believe in. It's always negative, pushing someone else down. And then there's no time for there's only times for hostility, and nobody can pivot anymore.
Yeah. What you just said there, I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell. He taught mythology and comparative religion at Sarah Lawrence College for about 45 years. But one of the things that he said that sticks with me is that idea of that the way to spirituality of a kind is finding the divine in the mundane. And the best example I always thought of is the Japanese tea ceremony. It's something as simple as making a cup of tea. But when you do it their way, every movement, where you place the spoon, the direction that the handle on the cup is facing, they all have significance. And wow. So to take your dog for a walk could be a spiritual thing if you, like you say, be thankful for and see what those mundane things are. A few steps down the sidewalk might seem every day, but yet there's a divinity in it.
100%. The whole role, I guess, mission of man is to be able to synchronize physical and spiritual. That is the key to living a harmonious life. When there's a disconnect between the physical and the spiritual, and I'm not even talking about on the outside, within man itself, there can be a dichotomy. One day they feel up and spiritual, another day they can feel very negative and very down. But that is part of life. That's a healthy person, and a healthy person has the ability to learn how to bring it together. Just on a personal note, last weekend, I shouldn't put a time to this, but it was about a week ago, we were blessed with a grandchild. Oh,
congratulations. Wow.
And the bris, the Jewish circumcision, took place on the Shabbos. And it was a very great celebration. And during the celebration, I mentioned the fact that Why is that in the Jewish tradition? You're taking a child who's 8 days old and don't ask any questions, and the boy has the circumcision. It's called the bris. And the answer basically is that it actually, the physical person as well as the spiritual come together. The act of a circumcision in terms of a bris is actually helping the child throughout his life learn to combine that which is most physical with that which is most spiritual. So it really begins at an early age, knowing that you've impacted or imprinted, so to speak, one's body with this act of God. And that is really something throughout life where people must, doesn't matter who you are, learning to synchronize physical and spiritual, like you say. Certainly in my world, when I sit down to breakfast or food, eating, I make a blessing beforehand. So you're taking something very physical. And by the way, the blessing also includes appreciation of the farmer. We go to the supermarket and pick up the food and fartik, and that's it. But you come to think about all the efforts made by the delivering and then the farmer and the planting and then the seasoning. There's so many things go on behind the bread that you eat. And if a person spoke, I remember when 9/11, right? I'm sure, Bill, you remember where you were at 9/11.
Oh, sure.
For the next 3 days, that's how long it lasted. I just went to say thank you to the guy who pumped gas, to the mailman who came, to the sanitation guy. And after 3 days, we went back to normal. But at that moment, we came to appreciate the simplest thing in life and the wonderful people around us who help us. And we should be have the same feeling about everybody around us, how every one of us plays a role. The moment we're born, Bill, means God says you matter. You're here on a mission. The person, if every human being remembered their mission in life, that they have a mission, whoever they may be, whatever affiliation, this would be a wonderful, peaceful world.
Yeah. That's an image to capture and carry around in today's atmosphere. And I read a story the other day about hate crimes and how does your congregation, I'm sure, considering history and all that, that must be a scary time and a scary story to read.
Yes, this is something we're very much aware of in terms of our security and how careful we must be. When services are taking place, the government has gone out of its way to help all houses of worship, schools, etc., with special security grants. We appreciate that. Yes. But again, what is the basis of all this hate crimes and anti-Semitism and all that kind of stuff? It boils down to really people spending more time or less time on themselves, trying to better themselves. So it's usually people who live empty lives are the ones who have time to do these things. People who are filling their life with meaningful activities, both in terms of family, themselves, their community, only do good things in life. It's usually people who have very, very led or haven't been educated properly end up doing these kinds of things. I think that's where it lies down to. And there's a message that we all bring to the world, a positive one, and we should always be proud of it. And even though we face these many things in our times, I see it as an opportunity to be even more. When there's darkness outside, we must bring even a stronger light, to be more proud, but not to hide ourselves, not to hide under the table, but on the contrary, because I think deep down, the United States of America is a wonderful country. And the people, all of us are deep thinking, caring people. Even on the dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." And that hasn't been lost yet. So far, it hasn't been taken off that bill, and that means that there's the whole United States, the Constitution. I come from England, I mentioned earlier on. I know why America came about. They wanted that freedom, and this freedom can be used in a positive manner. So the more time we spend within ourselves, recognizing how powerful we are as a human being, the less time we have to do negative things to other people, and the lack of respect for people's property, other people's bodies, and all the other things that we see, all boils down to absolute, rather than spending time thinking about what they can add to this world and contribute, It's all about negativity.
Yeah, sadly. It reminds me of, we used to say, because we're on a news show, we try to stay abreast of things, but to immerse yourself in that will drive you crazy. Like again, the 24-hour news cycle, and it gets so. And here, the equivalent of that is that you have a congregation, and this news is. I mean, it brings up bad memories. It makes if it's dwelled on, and I guess that's what you're really saying is you can't really dwell on it. It's a part of. It's a part of the beautiful world, even though it's not beautiful.
I always say on Shabbos, when I meet my congregation, that this is an opportunity to step out of the world. Rather than be influenced by the world, learn how to look and be a good impact on the world. So the Shabbos experience, the prayers, the camaraderie, the enjoyment, the Kiddush, and all the things which we do on Shabbos, and the learning allows us to rise above, transcend. That's the power of the Sabbath, is to transcend from the world for a few hours and look at the world from God's view, as opposed to the inundation that we have throughout the week, where thousands of people are telling us what we should do and think.
Interestingly enough, in the Christian traditions, you have the Catholic Church, and they have all their icons, and when you walk into a church, it's that you're nowhere else but in a sanctuary. There's no mistaking it. And Campbell would talk about that and say that because in the Protestant traditions, they got rid of all the icons. They thought that was garish. We shouldn't have. It should just be a plain building, and we'll worship in that atmosphere. We don't need statues, and But Campbell mentions, he said, when you walk into St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, when you go up those steps and you're now in the sanctuary, you know that you're someplace other. You're not on the street. You're not in a diner. You're not in an auditorium. You're someplace. So he said that's your consciousness changing from that experience. And the idea is to turn around and walk back out onto Fifth Avenue and bring that new consciousness with you.
That's the trick. That's the hardest thing is, it's not about the Sabbath. It's 6 days. 6 days where we do go out into the world, and to feel the Sabbath experience throughout the week that's the challenge. Not just to feel spiritual and religious in a house of worship, but really to feel the same way at home and interacting with people around us.
Yep. Yeah. Well, okay. The clock on the wall is prompting me to. We're going to move on out of here real quick. And if we had a dinner, I think we could go for a week. There are so many things that I would look to bring up, but it's coming up.
Yeah, thank you to you and all your listeners. Thank you so much, everybody.
You've been listening to 90.3 WHPC, the radio voice of Nassau Community College. I'm Bill McIntyre, here with Rabbi Perl for this edition of this week's Long Island News. And we'll see you next time, right here on 90.3 WHPC.